Hello everyone, let's work on Chopin's E minor Prelude together. So first of all, we'll just break down the right hand one bit at a time. So first thing is a B octave. So, and then C, and C and B, and then C and B again, and then B flat and A. And B natural in A, and B natural in A, then a dotted rhythm B natural in A. Now notice that I do 4, 3, 2, and just because I change fingers doesn't change it from being legato, right? And then the most dissonant note G sharp. And then A, B, D, C, E, A, F sharp, right? So B, A, B, 5 on D, 4, 1 on E, and then 3, 2, and then A, F sharp. Grace note on A, on B and A, right? So now, a lot of people would play kind of percussive, but this is a melody, so you might want to consider being more lyrical and playing that slowly. So the G is the thumb, F sharp, and then there's an accent. Right? So in a melody, when you see an accent, you just want to think more expressive, right? So that C natural, right, is very expressive. And also underneath you have a B7 chord. So this C is very expressive, right? D sharp, F sharp, D. Okay, so that's the whole first half, right? So let's go from that grace note again on the B, right? And here it is: 1, 4, 2, 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, so that's that whole first section, right hand. So now the soul of the piece is in the left hand, right? So you're going to start off with an E minor chord. And this E minor chord is in first inversion. So here it is, right here, right? So one of the ways to memorize this left hand is to think about the chords. The other way is just to think about what notes change and what the shape of the chord is. So first of all, you have an E minor chord, and you play that 8 times. And then this is a B7 chord, but with a suspended 4th. So if I played a real B7 chord, and I got, instead of the 3rd of the chord, root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, I played the 4th, I would have that suspended 4th. So that's what happens. So it happens here. So the B in the right hand makes a B7 chord. So you go from this to this. All right, the other way you want to think about it is that the bottom 2 notes just move down, right? So, and then you have the actual B7 chord. So if I put it in root position, there's your B7 chord. So the 4th resolves. Then you have, what in the world chord is that? Well, if I had an F7 chord, it would be this. But if I flatted that 5th, I get this floating chord, which is all whole. It sounds like whole tones, right? And that's the chord we have here. So Chopin's very, very expressive, makes everything expressive in this piece by playing lots of dissonances. And then you have a D minor chord. And what is this? You can either say it's an F minor 6 chord or it's a D minor 7 with a flatted 5th, which is also in classical terminology a half diminished chord. Now this half diminished chord is very, very important because it sounds like always sounds like a scream of anguish, right? So, and this is used throughout this piece a lot. So let's go through this first 3 measures again. So E minor, B suspended 4th, so it's an F sharp and A and E, then diminished 7th, right? Or and then F7, D minor, diminished, D diminished. Okay, next chord, E7. So it's E, G sharp, D. Then E minor 7. So if I add the B from the melody, remember we're always going to incorporate the melody note. This is diminished 7th, A minor 7th. Right? If I add the A. Otherwise, you just want to think of the left hand as a C chord. Now, what's this? So our half diminished again. It's F sharp, half diminished, right? Diminished 7th, D sharp, diminished 7th. Notice that we're always having dissonances, right? So these dissonances make things very expressive. D7. And then the B comes in and is clash again. And I'm just playing one finger, I know right now. D minor 7. This A becomes dissonance and becomes the diminished 7th. Right? So D minor 7, D diminished 7th. Then what happens here? Well, if we actually make, this is not really a chord, this is just a dissonance that's going to resolve to A minor, but what is this chord? So it's C augmented major 7th. Right? And that resolves. Right? Stuff that you wouldn't think happening until late Wagner or Mahler. It's happening with Chopin. A minor. B suspended. B7. A minor. B7. A minor. Okay, so let's go through that. I know I was like doing lots of harmony, but you can pause and go through all of those chords, and as I'm saying the names, memorize the name of the chord. Now the other thing you can just do is memorize the notes and which notes change. So from the beginning, E minor, so it's G, B, and E, right? And then the bottom 2 notes just move down, 1. Right? And then the top note moves down 1. And then now you're going from here to here. The bottom note moves down 1. Then the top note moves down. Now the middle note moves. Right? This is the other way you can think about it, right? So then what happens? The bottom note moves down 1. And then the middle note moves down 1. Then the top note moves down 1. Then the top note moves down 1. And then the middle note moves down. And then the bottom note moves down. Then the bottom note moves down. Then the middle note moves down. Then the top note moves down. Right? And this is brilliant. He's just changing a few notes and probably doing this empirically, meaning that he composed it at the piano, right? Just put his hands on the piano and whatever chords came out, came out. Okay, and then bottom 2 notes move down, and then the top note moves down. And then what happens? Just the bottom note, and then the middle note, and then the bottom 2 notes, and then the bottom 2 notes move down 1 note, and then the bottom 2 notes move up. Okay, so now let's do that in context. So let's watch. E minor. Bottom two notes move down. B suspended fourth. B7. F7. D minor. F diminished. E7. E minor 7. E diminished 7th. C or A minor 7th. That is F sharp minor 7 flat 5 or F sharp half diminished. D sharp diminished 7th, D7, D minor 7, D diminished 7th, G augmented with the major 7th, A minor, B suspended fourth, B7, A minor, B7, okay, so now let's do it measure by measure. So when you learn a piece, you learn it measure by measure. Both hands. And that's all you practice, right? And you got that part down. And you stop on the downbeat because we're going to link. Okay, so then the next thing you do is this. Same thing, and you're going to repeat that. Right, then you start in the next measure. Right, and feel free to pause and repeat as much as you need to, and then the next measure. Right, and then again. Okay, and then the next measure. And then the next measure. And you want to feel each harmony. Notice that there are no dynamics written, but it said espressivo at the beginning. So that gives you a license to play around with the sound and the feeling of each chord and how much you play into the notes and the clashes that are created, right? So starting where we left off. Right, and then the next measure. Listen to how dissonant that, how expressive that G sharp will be. And the A will change. You hear that G sharp change from there to there, even though it ties. Let's do that measure again. Right, so now we've tied the G sharp, and let's start in the next measure. And then the next measure. And then the next measure. And you hear that? G sharp is very dissonant because it needs to resolve. So you're going to lean into that G natural, right? I said G sharp is G natural, right? And so going on. Now notice that this is like a little mini cadenza here, right? You could have written anything. could have written something like that, right? But because it's just a short cadenza, so it's kind of free. The rhythm of the left hand stops, so you can kind of take this a little bit out of times. Okay, so now we're in the second half of the piece. So let's do just the right hand. It's the same C and B as before, but now it's going to get more terse and more things are going to happen. And it says smorzando, which is dying away. And you have those very, sounds like a funeral at the end, right? So let's break this down now. So you have this B, C section, right? But let's look at the next section. There are some people who cannot play dotted rhythms without playing short. And I don't know what that is, but it's everywhere. I hear it in orchestral playing, and I hear it in all kinds of instrumental playing. I hear it instead of, right? You also want to hear three little notes. Right? You can also overdot it, and some people will overdot it. Still doesn't mean it's short. If you want to be more dramatic, I mean, that's a matter of taste. A good musician would be able to play either one and make it work, right? I like the one where it's a real 16th in this case, right? Where I'm playing in my head. That gives it a little bit more weight. So now what's the turn? Right? So the other mistake I see people making is they see a turn and it's not really represented by any notes on the music, so they'll do some floppy arm thing. Because the turn is fancy, so that means you have to do something fancy with the arm. No, it's the same as playing your scale, whatever your scale technique is, where we use more fingers and not so much arm, right? So not with lots of arm flopping, right? You're actually part of the melody. It's very melodic and it's very lyrical. Right? Now he wrote stretto, which means rush a little bit, right? Squeeze it, right? Right? So move it forward in this part, right? Now this gets very expressive because why? You have dissonant note that doesn't really fit into any chord, right? And this. And you hear all of those dissonants. So every note in this section is expressive. So what are those notes? E, D sharp, C. And in a minor scale, the flatted sixth is the most expressive note of the scale. You see that? That's always used at climaxes in melodies, right? So C natural is very, 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 very plaintive is the word, right? And then D natural, then a triplet. Right? And the music does relax at this moment. There's a diminuendo. So A, F sharp. And then crescendo. And then dying away. F sharp, E. And then you have to ask yourself, thumb or pinky? So how do we control these notes to make them very, very soft? We think we're going to play loud, but we just don't. We play with a loose wrist, loose arm, but stiff fingers, right? And the other thing is, this is the loudest note, the top. So when I play, I don't play the whole chord. I play, that's the loudest. Okay, so let's look at the left hand. So you have E minor, same as before, right? So you have that B natural, so the suspended fourth, and then but you go right to the F with the flat, F7 with the flat fifth, and then the actual F7, right? And then so now you have a half diminished, F half diminished, fully diminished, F, E7, E minor 7, E diminished 7th, so lots of diminished sevenths, right? So C sharp diminished 7th, A minor, so this is supposed to be a B7, but instead we have A diminished 7th, and then we have again our G augmented with a major 7th. That's going to resolve to an E minor, which is our tonic, right? Right, so it's very, 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 very modern for early 1800s. E minor, A minor, so F sharp, half diminished. And then finally we're going to get to some sort of cadential figure, right? Where we're going to threaten to end in E minor, right? So we're going to set us up, right? So we have E minor, 4, E minor, A minor, E minor, and then finally 5, B7, B7, and then he says no, C, deceptive cadence. C7, A minor, and then finally E major, E minor, C7. And then we're left up in the air. Ooh, what's going to happen, right? And then B7. Right? And it finally ends in the right key it's supposed to. Okay, so now let's do this left hand with how the notes change, right? So you go E minor, bottom two notes move down, and then the bottom and the top move down, and then the middle note moves, top note, bottom note, middle note, top note, and then you have to get diminished chord, and then the top and the bottom move down a half step, octave B, and then you have the screamy chord, so A, diminished 7th, then your G augmented, and then E minor. Right, so you realize also that this G augmented is not really a chord, it's just the E minor chord with the wrong notes that resolve. A minor, F sharp, minor 7 flat 5 if you're a jazz person, or F sharp half diminished, E, right, E minor, or you can call that B suspended, yeah, A minor, E, B suspended, right, A minor, both notes move in for C major. This is called a deceptive cadence, because what are we expecting? We're expecting this, right? But instead we got, were you deceived? And then C7, A minor, B, suspended fourth, E major. Well, actually, this is E suspended fourth, E major, E minor, C7, right, when we leave the third out. And then B. Suspended fourth, B, E minor. So let's do that second part. Now we're going to practice it one measure at a time, as we did before. And this is for memorization purposes. This is the way you would memorize it, right? So after you've done the little mini cadenza, you're going to go to there. And the next measure. F minor 7 flat 5 or F half diminished, and from there. So each downbeat you're going to stop for now, and you're just going to link the measures. And then you can also go and do 2 measures at a time, and then do 4 measures at a time, right? So you practice each measure. What I find beginners do is they'll play a little bit, make a mistake, go back to the beginning. And then the beginning is really great, but then up to wherever the mistake is, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So this is how you practice evenly. You can also practice backwards from the end to the beginning. Okay, so now the next measure, where everything breaks loose, right? So in this measure, so you could also practice each beat, right? So you can do, right, then practice, right, and then the next measure, and then work it up so that you can play this whole measure, because everything happens in this measure, right? So the next measure. And the next measure. Now you have this 2 against 3. So this one is 1 note per 1 note, right? But then so how do we practice that? We know that the first note is together. Then the right hand plays, left hand, right hand, right? So that you just do, you can also practice beating time, right? So you can do, and then you can do, and put it together, okay? So that's that whole measure. And notice how I'm not so rigid about that 3 against 2 being perfect. It's also lyrical, and you would take a little license. You can take a little license. And then the next measure. And then we're going to be deceptive, right? So we're going to make everybody believe we're going to end in E minor in this measure, but then we're going to end on a C. So there's a crescendo. And there's our deception, right? C major. Next measure. next measure. Or if we want to die away more, leave that silence, like, ooh, what's going to happen? And then our final measure. Now, I'd picture that in the orchestra being the trombones at the end, right? So I want the sound to still be rich, even though it's pianissimo. And I want to hear this open fifth in the left hand. Right? And then the other thing is when you actually play it for real, you just want to take the fermatas, but you kind of want to stay in time, right? So if I'm playing this ending, and then on time, right? So almost just in time, maybe the last chord, a slight delay, but not much. Okay, well, I hope this helped you. And as always, I wish you happy practicing and thank you for watching.